Pentagon is floating the nuclear option for a sitting U.S. senator, and that senator is Mark Kelly. The message that sparked all of this was simple: refuse illegal orders. I am Mandatory Fun Day, and this is a snapshot report of what is going on between the Pentagon and a senator who went viral on social media. Here's what we know. On November 18th, 2025, Senator Mark Kelly, who's a Democrat from Arizona and a retired U.S. Navy captain, appeared in a short video speaking directly to troops and intel folks. Kelly is a naval aviator and test pilot who flew 39 combat missions in Operation Desert Storm and retired as a captain in the Navy after 25 years. That is an 06, very, very senior individual. He later served as a NASA space shuttle pilot and commander on 4 missions, including commanding STS-134, the final flight of Space Shuttle Endeavour, and then he entered politics. In that video, Senator Kelly and 5 other Democratic lawmakers with military or intelligence backgrounds urged service members to refuse unlawful or illegal orders and to stay loyal to the Constitution. The other lawmakers in the video were reported as Senator Alyssa Slotkin, who's a former CIA and DoD official. Slotkin spent her early career as a CIA analyst, including 3 tours in Iraq alongside U.S. forces. She later held senior national security roles at the Pentagon and White House, rising to acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, overseeing policy on Russia, Europe, and the Middle East. She served in the White House from 2019 to 2025 before winning a Michigan Senate seat in 2024 and taking office in 2025. Next up, we had Representatives Jason Crow, Chris DeLugio, Chrissy Hulan, and Maggie Goodlander. Representative Crow, who's a Democrat from Colorado, is a former U.S. Army Ranger who completed 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan with the 82nd Airborne Division and 75th Ranger Regiment. He was awarded a Bronze Star for leading troops in combat in Iraq, and in Congress, he's been a visible voice on veterans issues and national security. Representative DeLugio, who's a Democrat from Pennsylvania, is a U.S. Naval Academy graduate who served as a Navy surface warfare officer and deployed in support of operations tied to Iraq. After the Navy, he became a voting rights and election security attorney, working at places like the Brennan Center for Justice and as policy director at Pitt Cyber. Representative Hulan, who is a Democrat from Pennsylvania, is an Air Force veteran who served on active duty and in the Air Force Reserve, leaving the service as a captain. Now, Air Force captain is an 03. It's different. She worked as a project manager on air and space defense technologies at Hanscom Air Force Base. On the civilian side, she's a Stanford engineer with an MIT master's, former business executive, and educator/nonprofit leader. Representative Goodlander served over a decade as a Navy Reserve intelligence officer, reaching lieutenant, with experience in naval intelligence during the global war on terror era. She's a Yale-trained attorney who clerked for Merrick Garland and Justice Stephen Breyer, and she taught constitutional law and held senior roles at the Department of Justice and White House before running for Congress. The video did not point to one specific order from anybody and say that this is illegal. It stayed general. It said troops have a duty to reject illegal orders. The Pentagon responded on November 24th, announcing a formal review and investigation into Kelly for possible misconduct. Secretary Hegseth said the review could include options like recalling Kelly to active duty and pursuing action under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, or UCMJ. The Pentagon's reasoning is basically, or at least it appears to be, a retired regular component officer who draws retired pay can still fall under UCMJ Article 2 jurisdiction. Federal Law 10 USC 688 allows service secretaries to order some retirees back to active duty. The department claims the video could be interpreted as encouraging insubordination and harming good order and discipline. Now, Senator Kelly's response is that he says he was affirming what troops already swear to, Constitution first, and he calls the investigation intimidation. He's basically saying, hey, they are trying to silence me from telling troops exactly what they're supposed to do. President Donald Trump separately said on social media, he painted the video as seditious. And that is political heat on top of the Pentagon's legal heat. The key point here is that telling troops to refuse illegal orders is not a new concept in the U.S. military. It's literally part of training in law. The fight here is the context. A political video from elected officials aimed at uniformed personnel. And this is significant. It is not without precedent, but we kind of got to draw some parallels from past situations because nothing quite like this has happened before. Here's what this will probably look like. And I have to say, I am not an attorney or legal professional. This is all coming from a layperson's perspective. But this is what I think is going to happen. In the near term, I think this stays a Pentagon review, not a courtroom drama. They'll gather the video, context, intent, and any alleged impact on troops. The Pentagon will likely frame this around good order and discipline and whether Senator Kelly used his retired status in a way that crosses UCMJ lines. Senator Kelly and Senate Democrats will likely frame this as constitutional speech and political intimidation, especially since he's a currently sitting senator. If this goes further, the biggest legal fork in the road is, can they recall him under the law? Which the answer is yes. The authority does exist on paper. And would a recall and court-martial survive a challenge? That's where it gets complicated fast. Because retiree UCMJ jurisdiction is real, but it's contentious, and courts have mostly upheld it in non-speech cases. We've seen the retirees are still under UCMJ argument flare up before, usually as a threat, almost never as a follow-through for speech specifically. In 1918, the United States versus Salvagno, a retired Army musician, was tried under the predecessor to Article 88 for criticizing President Woodrow Wilson. He was acquitted. The parallel here is that retiree speech in an Article 88 type charge, right? It's a very similar situation in that way. The difference is he was a private citizen retiree, not an elected official, and the system still backed away from punishing political speech. In 1942, a retired colonel had a speech case. A retired Army colonel was charged after giving a speech that questioned President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's loyalty. The Army dropped the charges. The parallel here is that it's a reminder that recall and court-martial power does exist. The difference is that even in World War II, with national unity pressure high, the military chose not to prosecute retiree political speech. In 2006, there was the Rumsfeld's revenge moment, after several retired generals publicly called for SecDef Donald Rumsfeld to resign over Iraq. Legal commentators noted that Article 88 could theoretically be used. No retiree was recalled or charged. The parallel here is that high-profile retirees were criticizing leadership. The difference is this was not a coordinated video aimed at troops, and the Pentagon still avoided using UCMJ as a political speech weapon. And in 2020, numerous retired flag officers, they basically said things against then President Trump. Multiple retired generals and admirals criticized President Trump during the Lafayette Square and election year turbulence. Article 88 talk came back into the headlines. Again, there were no prosecutions. The parallel here is that same statutory hook, same political heat. The difference is that this November 18th video was framed as guidance to troops, not just commentary about a leader, or at least that's what they're going to say. When retirees actually do get yanked back into the system, it's always for clear criminal misconduct, not speech. In the United States versus Dinger, they upheld court-martial jurisdiction over a retired Marine for serious criminal offenses. The case is regularly cited as proof the power is real. The parallel here is that retirees can be tried. The difference is it was about crimes, not a political message. In Larrabee versus the United States from 2020 to 2025, related rulings reaffirmed constitutionality of trying certain retirees for post-retirement crimes. The SCOTUS declined to disturb that framework. The courts keep saying, yes, jurisdiction exists, but those cases involved violence and, pretty heinous allegations of pretty heinous crimes with identifiable victims, not First Amendment adjacent speech. So the historical pattern is, for political speech, the military and courts have historically backed off, even when the law might allow action. For serious crimes, jurisdiction is used and has been repeatedly upheld. Politically, this already widened into a bigger argument about civil-military norms, how much the military should be used or seen to be used in political fights. I would expect a lot of people to say this is unprecedented. The accurate version of this is retirees can be recalled and tried, but doing that over political speech is almost unheard of. The practical end state is most likely this, from a layperson, not a legal professional. I think the review concludes with no recall, maybe a public reprimand or quiet closeout, or it becomes a test case that gets fought in federal court over retiree speech and UCMJ limits. The bottom line is this: a retired Navy captain turned senator reminded troops they can't be forced into illegal acts. The Pentagon says that reminder might itself be illegal under military law, and now we're watching a rare collision between constitutional duty, retiree jurisdiction, and politics. I am Mandatory Fun Day, and this was your Snapshot Report.